Hey, it's Time Scark 11 with another Xenoblade 3 class buff, this time looking at buffing Heavy Guard, the first tank class. So Heavy Guard's issues are that it's pretty slow and has a hard time holding aggro. Other than that, it's very good at its job of being a face tank because it's got huge HP, good defenses, and some damage reduction. All it's really missing is just the ability to consistently hold aggro. It does have some memes it can do with variable turret and evasion, with crit recharge, but for general use, it's just not very effective. So, going to be giving it ways to hold aggro better. Not going to be doing much for its damage. There's one thing to do for its damage, but overall, we're mainly going to be giving it non-damage related aggro. Also, it has an amazing coat. This is gorgeous coat. Look at how great this coat is. One of the best class outfits in the game. It looks good on everyone. So then the first thing to look at is the skills. There's not really too much to go over here. All of them are pretty good. Defense is so good. This is the best the best defender field skill in the game. And this is very nice. The only thing we're going to be changing is Aggravator. So this is fine in the early game. It's just once you get to late game, the aggro from this is basically non-existent. So I'm going to be changing not the value of it, because it's just way too hard to make a competitive value on this. Instead, I'm going to change the way it works and make it percentage based. This way it would scale perfectly with everything else. It would never fall off. I'm going to change this to absorbs 5% aggro off of every party member per second. So it's not really much, and it definitely won't make a big impact on someone who's drawing a lot of aggro, but this is only going to be added on to other things that we're doing for its aggro. But overall, this should make a big difference if it's absorbing aggro off of other characters, because you are taking it off of 6 other characters at once. So even if it's not making a big impact on an individual, it will accrue a lot of aggro overall over time. So the first thing we're doing for arts is not even looking at its own arts first. Once again, fix debuffs. If you fix debuffs, you can use Glow Ring. Target Lock solves a huge amount of aggro issues on Kavesi tank classes, even if temporarily, and clearly they intended for that to be the way you use it. It's just, it doesn't work because you can't inflict Target Lock because debuff resistance is too high. So fix debuffs, and then Glow Ring alone is a major fix for aggro. And still some other things, because that is only temporarily. So still going to be looking at some of its own arts to buff those a little. So Bull Rush, now this is more of a buff for the early game than post-game, since post-game you're probably not even going to be using this for topple anyway. But I would reduce the cooldown on this. Just make it a bit lower cooldown so you have more topples in the early game. This is mainly to make it fit more like the Rhine class that it's supposed to be. I mean, it's very clearly intended to play like Rhine did, except it's really slow and plays more like a Shield Hammer from 2. When it's supposed to be more like Rhine. So just make that a lower cooldown. You could cut the ratio on it a little bit to compensate for that. It wouldn't really make a difference since you're using that for topple and not the actual damage on it. Variable turret, nothing changed there. Good art. Crash Out. This one's pretty nice. It's just, it's too slow. I would just make it come out a bit faster, and that's it really. Otherwise, if you just made it a little bit faster, it would be very nice art. Uppercut Slash. So this is kind of, I feel like it's meant to be the sword drive kind of art, but its ratio isn't high enough for that. So I would just increase the ratio for this. I would keep it slow. It makes sense to be slow if you're going to make this like the equivalent of sword drive. So I would increase the ratio to, let's say, 550 instead. Huge ratio. Maybe increase the cooldown for it a bit to compensate for that to 22 seconds. So big ratio, boost the aggro generated when you use it, so using that big ratio gets you a lot of aggro all at once. And nothing changed there with Solid Stance. Mad Taunt, this isn't going to matter too much since you're not really going to continue using this in the postgame anyway, but for the point, well, until you get to the point where you're not going to use it anymore, I would buff this so that it is another Absorb aggro, this one being Absorb aggro on demand, similar to Blinding Blossom that Dunban had. So make this where you just absorb 50% aggro from every party member, so a huge version of the Aggravator skill, which would draw 5% aggro per second. This one is draw 50% aggro from all 6 other party members all at once, which is basically going to guarantee that you take aggro off of anyone. And yeah, that's really it. Not a huge amount of changes to make to Heavy Guard, because it's very good already. It's just lacking the one key thing that it needs to do its job. So mostly just small improvements, with a few big improvements being the ability of actually using Glow Ring, and Aggravator being consistent in keeping aggro on you. And making a very strong Uppercut Slash would also be very useful. And you could use that for smashing as well. Having Uppercut Slash with Mighty Beat, having the big ratio on it would make it very powerful for smashing. So another way to draw a lot of aggro all at once with big bursts. So I think the next one I'll cover will be Lost Vanguard. Then I also want to go over a buff video on Ouroboros, on how to make the Ouroboros forms work a little better, because they really fall off late game and they could use some quality of life as well. So I'll probably do Lost Vanguard next, and then Ouroboros after that, and then I have one more planned with Royal Summoner. I might think of some more. I feel like just the fixing debuffs alone would also be enough to make Guardian Commander work. That would be the only thing it really needs. Though maybe you could also change the Guardian Commander field skill a bit. Overall, I think the only thing Guardian Commander really needs though is just the Glow Ring change that Heavy Guard would get here. But if you want to see the other buffs that I did, then you can check out my playlist for that should be up on screen now, including other Xeno videos included in there as well. Also a theory on who Riku is. If you watched the end, comment Blossom Dance down below to let me know, and see you next time.